Hi, everyone. Hope you're all tuned in on our Facebook group already. While we're waiting for the rest, I just wanted to introduce myself. So, I'm Deirdre. I am the founder of Liyab. So, as you all know, Liyab is an e learning startup. We're really focused on helping Gen Z Filipinos start the career that they want and transition into working life, of course. So, I am so happy that a lot of you are tuned in already. While we're waiting for others, I have an activity for you guys. Para it's not boring while we're waiting for the rest to tune in and join the group. So since we're all on lockdown, I just wanted you guys to comment your answer to the question, what's been keeping you busy during this lockdown? So if you can leave your comments on the Facebook Live, that would be great so that you can let others know also what's been keeping you busy. Personally, what's been keeping me busy is, of course, coming up with all of these online activities for you guys, for our group. We've got some interesting stuff lined up. I've been talking to some career coaches who are willing to help and talk about, for example, trying to draft your purpose if you're that's something you're trying to figure out now. I am also talking to someone from the HR industry to help you guys, revamp your personal branding, especially your LinkedIn and your other social media accounts. So those are some topics that we are working very hard on, so that you guys can, make this lockdown time productive. Other things, we have the searching for the first job online version of the workshop next week happening. So we won't have a lot of activities in the main group for next week because we'll be focused on the 20 people we will be accommodating to join that workshop. So if you haven't yet, you can sign up. The link is on our Facebook page and also in the group. So what are you guys up to lately? Did anyone comment already or share what has been keeping you busy during this lockdown? So, we will be starting the webinar in a minute. So, while we're waiting for others, you still got time to comment your question or your answers to the question, what's been keeping you busy during this lockdown? Um, for me, aside from coming up with all these events for you guys, I have been binge watching a series, an HBO series with my two brothers at home. We're catching up on Silicon Valley. Yes, I know it's an old show, but I haven't really immersed myself in that. So we've been binge watching that. Netflix, not so much, surprisingly, because we're all busy with our own stuff during the day. So when we eat dinner together, we watch in front of the TV. So all right, are we waiting for others? You guys can still share what's been keeping you busy during this lockdown. Just a quick check in for everyone. All right. Okay. So we'll be starting now since we have a good amount of people on the Facebook Live already. No worries because this Facebook Live will remain on our Facebook group forever, or at least for the duration of the existence of the group. So those who have missed it can just rewatch all the parts that they missed. So some other things that I want to establish during this webinar is I want you guys to mark the learnings from this webinar with a thumbs up in the comments. So what's great about Facebook Live is that there is a timestamp right beside your comment. So what would help others who are missing out on this webinar live is if you can give a thumbs up in the learnings that are very interesting for you during that timestamp. Put a thumbs up in the comment so that everyone knows that hey, you found this interesting, and maybe someone else can find something interesting also during that timestamp. All right. So we will begin. So welcome to our webinar, Job Hunting from Home. So it's really all about how to prepare for phone and video interviews. Given situation right now, I know a lot of companies are still continuing to hire, but the main problem is they can't invite anymore the candidates to their office for the interview. One, because they're not in the office, and two, it's really discouraged for us to go out right now. So it's better to stay safe and healthy at home. So we organized this webinar to help you guys prepare for phone and video interviews. And I think this webinar would be especially helpful for anyone who has not yet experienced a phone or video interview. For those who have, I hope that some of the learnings here are still useful, or maybe would be a good review or reminder of the things that we have to keep in mind when preparing for phone and video interviews. So again, I am Deirdre Conde. I am the CEO and founder of Liyab. My background has been in psychology. That's my undergrad in college from UP Diliman, and my first job was in HR. So in that company, I was working for a local bank, and in that company, I was in charge of hiring for all of the entry level positions. So part of that was the management trainee program, but also the rest of the entry level positions in the company. I was screening about 100 applicants per week, so that included, like phone interviewing them, inviting them for an interview, inviting them for an assessment, and then eventually giving them the job offer, and then giving them their pre-employment requirements. So I had to discuss, like, okay, this is how you get your SSS, your TIN, your PhilHealth, pag-ibig, that sort of stuff. So all of that until onboarding of the entry level positions, meaning fresh grads. I was in charge of that. So I've seen a lot of fresh grad resumes, and I've encountered a lot of fresh grads in interviews and assessments. But after that, I pivoted my career in marketing. So some of the stuff I still teach as Yab are grounded on marketing principles that I've learned. And then, I've done a couple of other things, not as important right now. But if you want to learn more, that's my LinkedIn on the screen right now. And you can follow me on social media. But there's really not much there. I just suggest you follow Liab Learns, and that's also in the screen right now. All right. So let's get started. I think before we talk about how to prepare for an interview, it's very important that we discuss what is a job interview. I think a lot of people think that a job interview is more of like a question and answer situation going on between HR and an applicant. So, like, HR will ask a question and then you answer a question and answer. But actually, I think what helps with anyone going into a job interview is thinking of it as a conversation. So it's really just a conversation between a job candidate, so that's you, and the representative of the employer. So that's either HR or a hiring manager. And it's really to assess whether the candidate is the right person for the job. But for you, even as the job candidate, it's also an opportunity for you to assess whether the company is a fit for you. So it's a conversation, very two-way. It's not like it's skewed towards HR always asking all of the questions, because it is a conversation, and thinking about it that way, I hope would make it more comfortable for you to approach job interviews. So what do you need to prepare for job interviews? You need to prepare for the type of interview. Tonight we'll just be talking about the phone and video interview, because face-to-face interviews aren't happening right now, definitely. So we'll focus on how to prepare for a phone call interview and a video call interview. For a phone call interview, I really suggest that you start 15 minutes before the scheduled call and you find a good spot to take the call. So, what is a good spot? It's somewhere where there's strong Wi Fi or cellular carrier signal, depends on how the interviewer is going to call you. If it's via phone, then I suggest really a cellular carrier signal would be something that you're looking for. But if it's, for example, an audio interview on any of these online platforms, I suggest you find a spot in your house where there's strong Wi-Fi. It's also important that you find a quiet spot and it's free of background noises. So one common thing that I experienced a lot when I was doing phone call interviews before was I would catch them that they are on the street. So I hear a lot of background noises of cars. And that really catches me off guard as the HR person, because I know I already gave a schedule to this person. I told them I would be calling at a particular time. Or if we didn't schedule it beforehand, I would be texting beforehand and telling them that, hey, is it a call is it okay to call within the next 15 minutes? And you are allowed to decline. Um, right? If you don't think that you can find a spot like this, it's okay to decline. You want to set yourself up for a, relatively stress-free call. And I know also, as someone who has applied for jobs and has done phone interviews as a candidate, it's quite stressful knowing that the background is also quite noisy and distracting. So I suggest you set yourself up for success by finding a place free of background noises and free of distractions. Sometimes, and lately I've been experiencing this, especially because I've been doing a lot of calls lately given this lockdown. Even your electric fan, if it's pointed to you, it makes such a loud like wind sound. So even that, I think best to not be directly in front of a fan. So those are just some tips in finding a good spot to take the call. Another important thing is, if you live with family members, tell them that you're um, tell the people that you're with about the interview. Um, Especially, we've all seen that video of this guy doing a CNN, I think, call, and then his kid walks up in the background because the family didn't know that he was doing that call. So very important that you tell the people you're with that you're gonna do an interview, so they know not to, you know, distract you. I personally have been on calls interviewing people, and the interviewee is being called by his mom, and he had to tell his mom that he is in an interview while in the call. So good to have that out of the way and prepare before that happens. Next, good thing about a phone interview is they can't see you. So be ready with your resume if you need it for reference, the resume that you submitted to them, and a pen and a paper if that helps you take notes, or if you are a nervous person, because I've seen people like this, who actually doodle just to keep themselves calm. So just have a pen and paper ready for whatever purpose. If you need to write something down, if you need to take notes, just have it ready. Also, have a glass of water nearby, because this is an interview. You will be talking a lot, and you never know what happens to your voice. Especially me, for example, when I'm talking, my mouth goes dry, and when I know the other person is talking, that's sometimes the opportunity I have because I'm not talking, to sip some water just to make sure my voice doesn't sound dry. So have a glass of water nearby also. Very important to keep yourself hydrated anyway. Next, and I think not a lot of people know this, it is best to use earphones, like what I'm doing right now. It's because if and please really avoid, as much as actually just avoid putting it on loudspeaker. When you're on loudspeaker, there's some feedback going on. So if your audio is too loud, the interviewer's voice just goes back into the phone, and then it makes some weird feedback, annoying feedback noises. So don't do loudspeaker. Don't do loudspeaker. Preferably still use earphones, like an earphone with a mic attached to it. That would be great. But if you don't have earphones, you can still do the classic, like just put it in your ear and talk like that. But um, that's a fair warning that will get nakakangawit siya. And sometimes the audio isn't as clear depending on what type of phone you have. So I still recommend using earphones. Next, stand up, stretch, and smile. I think a lot of people don't psych themselves up or prepare themselves like psychologically for interviews in general. And this is one cool tip that I tell all the Liyab learners who have ever encountered me. It's really one, the concept of like how your thoughts affect your behavior. It also goes the other way around, that how your behavior affects your feelings and your thoughts. So if you are in a place, there is a TED talk about this. Maybe I will link it to the group after this webinar. There is a TED talk about like just doing power poses makes you feel more confident. So even just like making yourself big, like I challenge you guys now to put your hands on your hips, sort of like just making yourself big. or even just a Superman pose, like with your chin up even, it makes you feel more confident. So do that. Um, Stand up, stretch, and smile. Even if the person can't see you, it they can hear if you are smiling and if you are, I guess, happy and engaged and confident. So put yourself in, like, psych yourself up to be in that mindset before you go into that interview. Most And then another thing, most HR people would actually send you a reminder message before your interview. I personally do this. I would always text like 10 to 15 minutes before the interview and text the person and say, hey, looking forward to our call later at like 2 p.m., like just as a reminder for that person that we have a call later at 2 p.m. But if you don't get one, like 15 minutes before, I would recommend that you do send one. Um, HR people and hiring managers, especially these days, are very, very busy with working from home, and and they are human. And then some of them it might have slipped their mind that they have an interview up. So it would be good to, graciously and professionally remind them. And this is one example of how you can remind them of that. So you can just say, hi, Mr. and not interviewer, just insert the person's name. Hi, Mr. Peter. This is Deirdre Conde applying for the management trainee post. I'm looking forward to our call later at 2 p.m. Talk to you in a bit. So that's one way that you can gently remind them that you have an interview scheduled if you don't get a reminder message from HR. There. Next, in the, rare occasion, and I hope it is really rare, that you miss the call, send them a message. You apologize for missing the call. So usually, I'm so sorry for missing your call. My phone was on silent, but I am ready to take the call now. So tell them when you're ready to take the call. I've had interviews scheduled where it has been like someone else's meeting got really bumped. So they just tell me, hey, hi, I'm sorry for missing your call. I am actually still in a meeting. Is it okay um, if I have the call like after 10 minutes? So just be gracious about missing the call. And then the worst thing you can do is just like you miss the call and then you just wait for them to call again. Um, nice HR people would, but then sometimes it's also a bad thing that you didn't answer the phone. So the HR person sometimes wouldn't even bother messaging you anymore or calling you again. So it would be good for you to initiate this if you miss the call. But I really propose that you don't miss the call. Since you've been preparing 15 minutes before anyway, you should be there already, ready for that. When you answer the phone, answer with a warm greeting. Sometimes I answer with, hi, this is Deirdre, just to confirm who is speaking, which is me. Because when I am doing the interview, like, of course, someone answers, I still check if that is the person, if I call the correct person. So, hi, is this Enrique on the line? And then just to skip that whole part, you can already say, hi, this is Deirdre, or just like, hi, good morning or good afternoon. Please avoid answering it very awkwardly, like, ay, hello po, hello, or like even worse, you don't say anything when you pick up the call. I have had so many phone interviews where they pick up the phone, and then there's nothing. Like they really just wait for me to say something. And I know it doesn't make or break their chances, but it's still, it's etiquette. So very important for you to pay attention to how you answer the phone even. Next, you listen intently, especially with how, this phones can be unreliable sometimes, or it can get choppy. So listen very intently. It even like makes the sound small, weaker. So listen very intently, and then because of some lag sometimes, especially if you're doing the call via internet, um, try not to interrupt the interviewer. Especially with everyone working from home these days, there's so many memes coming up about, common problems when you do con calls at home. It's just try not to interrupt the interviewer. If there's anything that you didn't hear clearly, you can you can have them repeat the question. Just ask them like, "I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. May you repeat the question?" Just do it graciously. I think you don't necessarily have to follow that exact script, but as long as you do it graciously and professionally, shouldn't be a problem for you to ask them to repeat the question. if the signal is weak or choppy, um, don't just assume that it's their line that is the problem. Best to assume that it's no one's fault and just ask, hi, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you. Can you hear me clearly? Just to confirm whether the other person can hear you clearly or not. So I know a lot of these tips are quite common sense, but in my experience, they are not as common. So I'm just running through some etiquette for the phone interview. All right. Next, give concise answers. Usually, the phone call interview is done um, as a primary screening method. It's not really the final interview, but it will open doors for you to get another interview, a more in depth interview. So, if you can give concise, impactful answers during the phone interview and try not to ramble on, um, that is already plus points for HR, meaning that you know how to communicate and you know how to adjust depending on the context. Next, thank them for their time and wish them like a good day. I love it when applicants actually during the call already like thank me for giving them the opportunity to talk talk about the opportunity, the job, and they also just wish me a good day, like have a nice day before they hang up the phone. And I think that is leaving your interview in a very high note already. You're leaving the interviewer with a positive experience, and that is good. One thing that a lot of people don't do these days is to send the thank you message. I mean, you already have their phone number. So you can message them actually. You don't have to ask like, hey, what's your email? Hey, what's your phone number? Because they called you already using their number. So and I actually give a lot of my interviewers a lot of chances, like even nudge them to think about this, because I always tell them after a phone interview that, hi, you have my number now. So if you have any more further questions, or if there's anything at all that I can help you with, you can send me a message. And then they still don't send the thank you message. But that is a sure way for you to stand out. So here's the template of a thank you message. So just say hi miss, and then that person's name. So hi miss Angeli, it was a pleasure meeting you today or talking to you today. I'd like, and then point out something that is very like memorable about your conversation, of what struck you the most. So you can say, thank you for taking the time to speak to me. It was an engaging conversation, especially when we talked about the company culture. I'd love to continue discussing opportunities to be part of what you've built here. So just leaving it again on a high note, and then give them an opportunity to still contact you after. So thanks again. So even just a simple message like that makes you memorable already, because not a lot of people do this. Okay, video interviews. How do you prepare? Still prepare 15 minutes before the scheduled call. Find a good spot to take the call. So again, strong Wi-Fi signal, or if you're doing this through data, strong, if you're Globe, you're Smart, or whatever signal. Um, Quiet and free of background noises, but additional now is background movement. So like what I said about that like viral video from a couple of years back, um, even movement in the background gets very distracting for your interviewer, right? And if you are on your desktop, you can even see what you look like, and even you will get distracted by what's happening behind you. So try to find a background that does not move. So like for example, this, my walls do not move, free of distractions again, and that includes your desktop. So prior to this webinar, what I had to do, I closed all my tabs, I closed all my messaging apps, just to make sure that nothing distracts me from speaking. And you should do that to yourself to clear out your desktop so that you're free of distractions. Bright lighting is also important. Whether I do when I do a video interview during the day, it's still quite dark. So it's weird because applicants, like for example, would be in their room, and that's fine, but then at least turn on the lights even if it's daytime. Try to find bright lighting. Try to go near a lamp, for example, just so that the interviewer can see you. The whole point of doing the video interview, and why you didn't do an audio only interview, is because the interviewer wanted to see you. So if it's dark, um, then what is the point? And again, tell the people you're with about the interview. Still very important. Okay. wear presentable clothes. And I mean your whole body. Again, because of this lockdown, there are so many jokes about what happens during video calls. And one of them is being like the top part of you is so dressed up, but then you're wearing shorts, for example. You never know if you will need to stand up for the interview. So best to wear presentable clothes all throughout. And would be good also to have you feel more confident because you're in full battle gear for this interview. Again, use earphones and not your laptop speaker, because what tends to happen, especially if you can't hear what the interviewer is saying, it's going to end up looking like this. Like you are so near your screen because you need to hear your interviewer's question. And also, if you don't have like a mic attached to your earphones, the interviewer can't hear you. So if you want your interviewer to hear you, you're going to lean forward towards your laptop as well, and then it looks awkward. I'm way too close to you. So use earphones again. Next, test your webcam and audio before that. Test just like how it looks like. Even if you are in a well-lit place, or for example, you're in your room and you think, hey, the lighting in my room is enough. But once you test that on your webcam, you can see if it's already too dark. So test that you can be heard. If you want, you can call someone else, like tell your friend, hey, I'm doing video interview later. I just need to test if my audio works. Can I call you very quickly? You can do that. Just test it. Next, same tips as before. Sit up, stretch, and smile just to put you in the confident mindset for that. And then reply to a reminder message or send a message 15 minutes before to your interviewer. And then, well, for calls like this, like if, for example, you're on a Zoom or Google Hangouts or any other of those tools, log into the platform 5 minutes before. You can mute everything, just to make sure that you are able to open the software already. Because if you wait until, like, for example, if your interview is at 2 p.m. and you wait until 2 p.m. to actually open the platform, and then you find out that you need to install something else, you need to update the software, that's gonna take some time. So you're gonna be late for your video interview. So best to log into the platform, open the software already 5 minutes before, so it gives you a bit of time to know whether you need to update anything. And for example, you need to update software and it's gonna take 15 minutes. Text your interviewer and warn them already that you might be a bit late because you're still updating the software. So try to log in 5 minutes before just to make sure that everything is going smoothly for the software. Again, if you miss a call, you send a message, answer with a smile because they can see you smile now, and a warm greeting. Listen intently. Again, do not interrupt the interviewer, and then just to show and give some signal that you are listening intently, like nod or smile when appropriate. Try not to be distracted. Like imagine asking the question for your interviewee, and then they're like on their phone, like they can hear your question, but they can see you not paying attention. So even then, like nod and smile and give them your full attention. So maintain some eye contact by looking at the camera and not your screen. So what I'm doing now is I'm looking at you guys and not like looking at myself or like on the upper right portion of my screen. I'm looking at you guys. So maintain eye contact of our calls. It could tend to be choppy. So if you are talking a bit more slowly than your normal talking voice, it gives them more chances to piece together what you're saying than talking really, really fast and you can't hear anything. All right. Are we still live? Are we still live? Let's check. Can you guys let me know if we're still live? Hi. Okay. What part did we end? Hi, everyone. Are we back? Are we back? Okay. Okay. So sorry for that if we had some technical difficulty, but I hope you guys didn't miss so much. So there. put some more thought into enunciating more clearly so that there's less like, hey, what was that again? Just try to talk more slowly, which I am now reminding myself of, just so if their connection is choppy, they can still piece together what you're saying. Okay. And then, same tips, thank them for their time, wish them a good day so that you leave them on a high note, and you send a thank you message after. All right, and that is the first half of our webinar. Um, cool, we are right on schedule. So, first part of preparing for the phone and video interview is really just preparing for the format, or yeah, of the format of the interview. So whether it's phone or video, there we gave you some tips on how to do that. But now next part that you need to prepare for are the interview questions. So this is basically gonna be the same with, questions that may be asked if you were in a face-to-face interview. So we will just tackle it that way. Prepare for the interview questions. Now, for Liab, at least, we think these are the different kinds of interview questions that you will encounter. So there is a classic, like, tell me about yourself sort of question, and it deserves its own category, uh, because it's like a classic. Almost everyone I know starts an interview with this. Next kind of question is information questions. I will be going through each of these in the next slide, so don't worry about that. So we have information questions, self-awareness questions, historical or behavioral questions, hypothetical or situational questions, competency questions, and then company questions. And then it always ends with like, do you have any questions for me? So these are the kinds of interview questions that you have to prepare for. So let's go through them. Um, but given that we're talking about phone and video interviews. For phone interviews, because it's more brief, I marked up the ones that you may be encountering more. So definitely you're gonna encounter the tell me about yourself um, question. Information questions are also done through the phone usually, and you'll know why later. And then some self-awareness questions, but not the really truly deep ones, because I think those are still reserved for when you can see the applicant or the person that you're conversing with. Behavioral and situational questions, and competency questions, actually, I personally don't ask any of these questions during a phone interview, because I one thing we lose, especially as people doing interviews, is we lose some of the visual cues um, that we can get from seeing the person's face, and how they answer the question. So these types of questions that go a bit deeper into, you know, how the candidate deals with certain situations, or talking about past experiences, would we would prefer seeing the person, just to make sure, like, not just if they're lying, but like if they're uncomfortable talking about an experience. That still says a lot. Like, there's so much that can be said just from your face. um, Lastly, company questions, because these some of these company questions are very simple to answer. So they are asked through the phone interview. And then, of course, do you have any questions for me? I would say, though, that for the do you have any questions for me, um, I don't encounter a lot of like deep do you have any questions for me responses during the phone interview. So it's usually just what are the next steps, that sort of thing. But I will give you some tips later on how to stand out, even if it's just from a brief phone interview. All right. And then, of course, they're all asked if you are on a video interview, because sometimes, especially now with our situation, I think the video interview is now used as a replacement of the face-to-face interview. All right. So, tell me about yourself. Tips for answering this question. Do not ask a question back like, what do you want to know? Or I encountered someone who was like, so tell me about yourself. And they're like, professionally or personally? And it's like, just answer the question. You don't, please don't answer it by asking a question back. Do not recite your resume, because I read your resume. So you don't need to tell me about anything about yourself that is something that I can read off of your resume. And but I also have encountered people who just gave me their whole childhood history or their whole life story. So I've encountered some people who've answered me like, I was born in this city, my parents are from here, and it's like, I mean, most of the time it's really not relevant unless it is. I mean, you can be very strategic about this. Like if you are interviewing for a company for or a role that would need you to be placed in a city that's outside of where you currently reside. So for example, my hometown is in Baguio City, and let's say I'm applying for an entry level position in Baguio City. Then it's relevant to say that, hey, I grew up in Baguio, so it kind of signals the interviewer already that, hey, I can send her back to Baguio or something, or she's familiar with the place already. But other than that, if it's really not relevant to the role, you don't need to go through that. For some of our liyab learners, we've taught them how to do an elevator pitch already, or if you have like a mission statement or a purpose statement, you can use that as your way to introduce yourself. So we recently recorded a podcast episode, and you guys, I suggest you guys watch out for that. We recently recorded a podcast episode with a career coach, a good friend of mine from the states. So her part-time job there in the states was she was a career coach for the students in her grad school. And one thing that she advises people is to prepare or introduce yourself with your purpose. So that's how she likes introducing herself. She says that she helps individuals and organizations grow and develop to draft their own purpose, for example. Another formula that I like suggesting is the present, past, future formula. So an example of this is, tell me about yourself. And I will say, well, currently I am learning a lot of graphic design in my free time. While I'm still searching for a job, I was thinking of using this free time to learn graphic design, and that's my present. And then the past part is, and that's because I've been doing some publicity and promotions work before in my undergrad for the different orgs I was part of. But then I know I did most of the directing and talking to other people to make the material, but I haven't been able to do the material myself. And that's something I've always wanted to try. Especially now, so that's the past, and then you say for the future part, especially now that I am looking for a role in marketing. So there, so you can end it with there. So present, past, future. Present is like, what are you doing now? Past is like related to some past experience that is probably in your resume, but just don't go dive into the detail of that. Just say something about it that's not on your resume. And then future, and hopefully that future statement is related to the role for the company that you are applying for. So I said, like, because now I'm looking for a marketing role. And so what you can do is like relate that future part to your future in the company. So that's a good formula to follow: present, past, future, if you need some sort of template. But I suggest you go be more creative about it. So if you have an elevator pitch or purpose statement, you can use that. Try to include following the following elements also, which is very important in that statement alone, in your answer alone there. Make sure it already expresses that you're the right person for the job you're applying for, um, and why you're applying for this job specifically. So in the present, past, future example that I gave, um, it shows that I'm applying for this job because I've done some publicity and promotions work for my org before. And that's something I'm very interested in. And that's why I'm applying for a marketing role now. So very short, right? It doesn't have to go more than 2 minutes. To be honest, there's this statistic going around that the best answers for interviews are between 20 seconds and 2 minutes. So if you try to keep your answers within that time frame, you're good. So you don't have to constantly be worrying, oh my gosh, am I rambling on, or was that answer too short? At least you can anchor yourself to that figure of 20 seconds, 2 minutes. Okay, next, information questions. Information questions, super duper easy to answer because they're really just asking for facts as answers. They're asking for more information from you. Very easy to answer. You don't it's actually very worrisome if you take some time trying to answer questions like this. So, for example, you're asked, "Where do you live now?" and you take a pause and then you try to remember where you live now. That is very worrisome for me. So, usually also, what happens is interviewers start the interviews with information questions just to get you into the groove of talking. So, for example, well, not the where can you start, but like where do you live now? How did you get here? Was it traffic? Like a bit of small talk just to get you comfortable. Um, but there are other types of information questions that you don't have to think too much about. These are just like fact answers to the information question. Next, you have self awareness questions. And these are the questions that boggle a lot of interviewees. So there's the very popular, what is your biggest strength or weakness? Where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years? All of this um, really asks you to, you know, dig deep on yourself and then answer these questions that you is still very authentic to you. Um, HR people ask this just to check on how much you know yourself. And with uh, it is very hard to go into how to answer these questions, but the best thing you can do right now is just to prepare. So these are the popular interview questions already. So practice them at home. For any interview that you will encounter, I guarantee you one of these questions will be asked. So at least one of these questions will be asked. So already prepare for your answers for this. Um, for our workshop next week, for example, we go through a couple of worksheets in the beginning of the whole crash course, just to help you guys figure out like what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, what motivates you, that sort of thing. So when we reach the module on interviews itself, it becomes easier to think of the answers to these questions. But the best thing you can do right now is just practice your answers for these questions already. Next, you have historical or behavioral questions. So all of these usually just start with tell me about a time where. So I added historical to this kind of question so that you remember that they are asking about a previous experience, very different from a hypothetical future situation, which we will be talking about next. But this really taps into like your previous experiences, and it's really just, I think, with psychologists and HR people in general, the best indicator of future behavior is past behavior, and that is why they ask these questions. One framework that we teach is is the SOAR is the SOAR framework in answering these questions. So when you talk about the situations, the behavioral questions are asking about, um, you can just use this framework in mind. So talk about the situation first. So set it up. This is what was going on. So for example, if we take the question, tell me about the time you made a mistake. So we tell them about the situation. Well, this is what happened. We needed to print this many flyers in this amount of time because we needed to promote this, that. So the objective was, and so you give them the objective, which was, um, these flyers were supposed to do this for the event, blah 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 blah, and then you go through the actions that you took. So because we knew that the supplier wasn't gonna deliver the flyers on time to promote the event, we had to come up with something else to to um, to promote the event. But I do acknowledge that it was my mistake because I didn't communicate it with the supplier beforehand, the importance of the flyers arriving on time, and that is why I took this action instead. And this is the result. So, for example, like if you that meant that you had to spend less because you had to cancel the order with the supplier, but you were still able to garner this many attendees to the event, and that's great. So just talk about the situation, the objective, the actions that you took, and then the result that your actions had. All right. Next, hypothetical situation questions. So these do not require that you have any previous experience with this. So, for example, like how would you fire someone? Of course, they're not going to ask you, tell me about the time that you had to fire someone. So The hypothetical situations are actually usually modeled out of things that you may experience in the company already. Like for me, there is a reason that company asks a hypothetical situational question, and that is because that is something that will happen a lot in the job or that you will encounter, and they already want to see how you're gonna do in that role once you're there. So, for example, if you are gonna be you're applying to be a project manager, and they ask you how would you communicate to stakeholders that your project is behind schedule, they are already checking on how would you deal with a situation like this once you're there in the job without actually hiring you. So good for you to just think about what are the different situations that I may be encountering in this job that I'm applying for, and that's how you can think of like the hypothetical question or situation questions that HR will ask you. So none of these are like super applicable to all of the jobs out there. So think about what kind of situations you would be encountering in the job you're applying for, and that is what you prepare for. Next, competency questions. In the same way, you have to think about what skills or knowledge the interviewer has to check for because you're applying to a specific role. This is encountered a lot with technical rules. So, for example, if you are a programmer, you might encounter a question that's like, which programming language do you think is the easiest to teach and learn? And it's really a test on like how much you know about programming languages, and if you are skilled at like teaching someone else this. For one I added one question that I encountered actually when I was applying for jobs. I was actually asked, how would you explain how the internet works to a 10-year-old? So it was testing for two competencies there. First is whether I understand how technology works, because I was applying for um, a tech firm. But then the second part of that was I would be interfacing a lot with people who aren't technical. So these are going to be the clients that I will be talking to. So it's very important that they see how am I going to explain a technical concept to a non-technical person, and that is the competency that they were looking for. So think about the different skills or knowledge that the job would require, and then prepare for those types of questions. Next, we have company questions. So how did you learn about this job? What do you want in this job? Basically, all of the questions related to like the company and the job who are asked by the employer, just to see if you did your research, if you did your research on the job, and if you did your research on the company. So customizing your answers to company questions based on research that you found, plus points already. So I start the interview actually sometimes with company questions. Like I ask them, hey, what do you know about the company and the role already? And it signals to me that this person is really interested in getting this job because they've done the research. Um, they know what we're all about. So this is really just to see if you are interested and if you did your research. So try to show that in your answers to these questions. Finally, we have the do you have any questions? Tips for answering this question. The answer is always yes. It is one really great way to be memorable. It's to ask questions. I do not remember the people that do not have questions. I always remember the people that do, especially the ones who had really smart, amazing questions. So ask questions that show you've done your research about the company or the role or the interviewer, or ask questions that reflect what you value. So for example, I saw this tweet going around lately that it's on the Liyab Learns Twitter actually, that once this whole COVID-19 situation is over, if this person goes for a job interview, he's gonna ask companies now, what did you do during the COVID situation? Because he values like the response to this whole situation right now. He wants to see if the company actually took steps to take care of their employees, that sort of thing. So ask questions that reflect what you value. Ask questions about the culture, especially now that I think like the younger generations are really more concerned about the culture of the companies that they're joining. Ask about the interviewer's experience with the company, especially if you've done your research about the interviewer. Honestly, this is super plus points, and this is what I try to do when I prepare for interviews. I actually, even when it's like the HR, like an HR assistant scheduling my interview, but I know it's gonna be an interview with someone else. I double checked and I asked like, "Hi, can I have the full name of the person I'm gonna be interviewing with?" But this like this to be honest, this tactic usually works in face-to-face interviews. So, but I asked like, "Hey, can I have the full name of the person I'm gonna be interviewing with, just in case that I need to find this person if I get there early, for example, I can leave the name of the receptionist." So it's my tactic to get that person's full name and then search them on LinkedIn and then see like, okay, what did this person do? And I want to ask something about his or her career. So I would ask, hey, how was your experience with this company before? And then why did you leave and join this company? So plus points already because it signals that you've done your research not just on the company, but on the interviewer. Avoid questions where you can simply Google the answer. So don't ask questions that you can see that like can be answered by something on their company website already, like how old is this company, how many employees do you have. Usually those stuff are on Google already, so you're wasting your question on something that you can Google, and the interviewer knows this. So some suggestions on questions that you can ask, but I suggest you become really creative and avoid asking some template questions. But if you can't think of anything, here are some of my suggestions. So you can ask like what the success in this role in the company look like, just to help you also give, especially if you have um, other interviews lined up. This helps you prepare for the next interviews because now you know what success looks like. Then you just have to show that you are able to deliver that. Same with what's the biggest challenge in the company right now. What's a typical week? So these are like, you can just screenshot this page, but these are some questions that you can ask when they ask you, do you have any questions? All right. So there, I know I just rambled on for an hour, but good that we are on schedule. So basically, what do you need to prepare for a phone or video interview? You prepare for the type of interview. So I gave you a lot of tips on how to prepare for phone interviews and video interviews. And then next is you have to prepare for the interview questions that you might encounter. So we gave you a list of questions already that you can prepare for and some tips to prepare for those. So that's really just it. I hope that you guys found this hour really insightful and that you learned a lot. So my request for you guys, is if you can comment your main takeaway in 3 words in the comments in the Facebook Live. I would super appreciate that, especially for the people who aren't gonna be able to watch the whole thing. At least they can read your comments and then they know what the main takeaway is, or it can get them curious and then they can try to find that part in the Facebook Live that you found interesting. All right, so comment your main takeaway in 3 words. I'm gonna check the Facebook Live actually and see if you guys are um, sending in some answers. Let's see. Oh, okay. Let's see. Oh, we have a question. So we have a question that asks, how would you differentiate your company from your competitor? Very interesting. Um, I say gauge it. Um, this is something I would ask a startup. Like if it is a startup company that I am applying for, I would definitely ask this just to show that, hey, I know who your competitors are because I've done my research. So that is a good question to ask for an early stage company. But for like, let's say an Ayala company, which is 150 years old, or the other conglomerates that are very, very old already, I don't think it's a question that is appropriate to ask because it is, I with all of the information available on the internet, there's already um, so many things that are said about what makes their company different from their competitor. So depends on the company that you're asking it to. Like if it is a young company, relatively unknown company, early stage company, go ahead and ask it. It makes you look very interested in the business model that they have and that you researched their competitors. Even better if you can name drop their competitor, like what makes you different from company B. Um, Great. But if it is an old company, traditional or like popular company, uh, no, best not to ask that sort of question. Okay, next. How much time would you say is normal to think about an answer, especially for an interesting question? I say not more than 3 seconds. And I like one tip I have, but I think it's more applicable to face interviews. If they offer you water, for example, take it. If they offer you water or drinks before you go into the interview, take it, because you can use it to pause. For example, if you need more time to think, so you can pause like 2 seconds, and then just grab the water, sip from it, and then pretend that okay, I just really needed to conveniently drink water at this moment. But don't hold the water glass for like more than 10 seconds. Just take a reasonable sip and then answer that question. Or yeah, so I think like not more than 3 seconds, I hope. Otherwise it looks awkward unless it's a really challenging question. Because for example, we've outlined the types of questions, right? If it's an information question and they literally just ask you where do you live, or when can you start, and you take more than 3 seconds to answer that, that is um telling. So um there. Okay, next. How many questions should you limit yourself to when they ask if you have any questions? Um, don't go overboard and ask more than three, I guess. And that is an arbitrary number for me. But I think like um, I don't normally get a lot of questions kasi, but don't go overboard and ask more than five, especially if these are difficult, or they would have long answers. Because for example, your question is just like, um, how many people will be in my team, that sort of thing. Those that have short answers, I think you can ask 3 to 5. But if it's a question that would require a long answer from the interviewer, I would say not more than three. Even just like pick maybe um, your top two questions, and then ask that. Okay. Next, was there a time that you experienced a situation wherein an applicant experienced internet disconnection? Yes, yes. Yes, I have experienced that type. Oh, you guys can read the rest of the question in the comments. But I have experienced situations where it just randomly cuts off. But then the good part is they text me, so that's good. If you know you were disconnected, you text your interviewer and say, I got disconnected. But if you think that it's something that can be solved immediately, like for example, just brief moment of disconnection, you can call again and it's gonna be fine, then that's good. If, for example, it's gonna take a while to resolve, um, like for some reason your brother accidentally, restarted the router and it's gonna take a while, then also message your interviewer and say, the internet or whatever might be back in 5 more minutes. So best way to deal with it is inform your interviewer of what's going on. If you don't know what's going on, um, to be honest, and it you think it's something that with the interviewer side, still just assume that it was your fault. Better that it's like that, and just say, "Hi, I'm sorry, we got cut off. You may call again." So that's one way to deal with it. Just inform the interviewer. Okay. All right. So we don't have any questions anymore, and I really appreciated that you guys sent in questions. I hope I was able to address, and you are fine with my answers. Those are just based on my personal experience of interviewing candidates. All right. So um, there's that. Really hoping I would get to invite more people, more HR people into the group so that they can do live chats like this and you can ask them their questions and they can provide a different perspective into hiring, anything related to hiring. So again, if you can, please comment your main takeaway in 3 words. Some final reminders from me. We have our online job hunting crash course next week that will happen 4 days straight, Monday to Thursday, every like 7 to 9 p.m. We'll be going through a couple of modules and you can apply for a free slot online. That is the link. It's also on our Facebook page, so you can just look for that. Um, I'm going to take this opportunity to discuss briefly what's going to be covered by that course. So we touch a bit of what is in the How Do I AC interview part, which is later in the course, because we're going to go through some essential modules like why is the first job important? What kind of job should I apply for? What are my strengths, weaknesses, that sort of thing. Um, what are employers looking for? Just so you know how to address those. How do I prepare for the job search? So that means, what do I need to prepare? Do I need to prepare a CV, a resume, a portfolio, that sort of thing? We will go through what you need to prepare for the job search. Next is, where do I apply for jobs, um, and how? So we're gonna talk about some strategies that you can employ when you're applying for jobs online, for example, or if you're emailing someone, or if you are in job fairs, for example. We're going to go through that and some, unconventional ways to find jobs. We will also give you some strategies for that. And then, how do I go through the recruitment funnel? A lot of people think that, you know, recruitment is really just about, I give my resume, I go to the interview, they give me the job offer. But there are a lot of steps in between that. So there's also like some personality assessments, some case studies, so many other activities that other companies will put into the recruitment funnel just so they can find the right person for the job. And then we will go more in depth with the interviews. And then finally, how do I deal with rejections? And what do I do with job offers? How do I assess a job offer? And how do I negotiate the job offer, for example? So these are all part of that 1 week online job hunting crash course that we're going to do next week. Again, apply for a free slot. But if you want to secure a guaranteed slot on the crash course, you can PM the page and we'll let you know how we can do that. All right. So thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. We went a little bit over time, but I'm happy that you guys are spending time at home, being productive. And, I love that you guys are preparing for interviews that are going to happen, or if you are going to go job searching after this lockdown is over. I am just very proud of you that you guys are taking this step and learning during this time. So thank you so much. And I will see you guys next time for our other activities. And if you have some ideas on like some topics that you guys might be interested in, people you want to ask, or some topics that are really pressing right now for your job hunt or your career development, we have a thread for that. I put up a poll the other day. So if you can just suggest some topics there, I will find a way for us to have like some webinar or Q&A where you guys can discuss that topic and learn more. So thank you again for being active in this group, and I'll see you next time. Bye.